Hey Build fans, I'm here with another quick little build. Now, at some point, I do want to cosplay as Tobias Beckett from the Solo movie. I really like that character. Him dying at the end kind of was sad, but you know, he's that one character that really belongs in that one movie. But it doesn't keep me from wanting to cosplay. I'm considering also I'm kind of an old guy with blondish long hair, blah blah, and I can do a mustache easily. But there's one piece of his gear that is small, goes unnoticed for most part, but every member of the Beckett crew on Bandor has this. And what it is, it's the wrist communicator. Now this wrist communicator is actually featured in the Solo film. And when they're on Bandor, Beckett talks to his wrist multiple times, and we get to see it on him in one shot, but we also get to see it on Val, his girlfriend, in several shots as well. So when I went into making this, not only did I consult my Solo encyclopedia of characters and gear, which Star Wars Universe official guide, these things again are gold, so you definitely want to get one. Not only did it have one detailed picture of it, but I was also able to go and look at screen caps of the actual device in the film. So that way I could get a good idea of what it does. Now, theirs in the film lights up every time they speak. Mine won't, because it's going to be a little bit easier and it's going to be made simply out of foam. So, let me show you how it's done. Before we get into that build, if you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe. Hit that like button below. Comment down below with me. If you have any questions, comment down there. I'm glad to answer them. And hit that bell for notifications. What do you say? Let me show you how it's done. So starting my build, I'm going to, of course, go into my Solo Star Wars Story official guide. This guide is good because it has all the pictures I need. And there's the communicator right there. So I get a good idea of how it's built, kind of the size of it. I'm also referencing the movie just to see what it is. I draw myself a little template, and that template's to kind of size up what I'm looking at, what all I need for this build. Using a piece of 4mm foam, I'm going to go ahead and cut it right at about 2 to 1.5 inches, 1 3/4, and I'm sizing up to my wrist just to make sure that's what I need. I'm taking a piece of 2mm foam, and what I want to do is I want to cut it at 2 inches long, but I actually want to make it a little bit thinner because I'm going to have layered edges moving up on the sides. So I size it up a little bit just to get how much edge I'm going to need. I think right there is good. I cut my piece. Make sure I use a ruler so that way I get a nice straight piece, and I'm going to check it. I think that's what I need. Good, almost 1/8 of an inch on each side. I take a piece of scrap 6mm foam, and I'm going to take my 45-degree cutter here. Now this is used for mats, but I use it also for foam. And what I want to do is I want to cut out 2 beveled edges. One beveled that has a good almost 1/4 of an inch distance on it. Yeah, that looks nice. Now the other one, instead of having to use my bevel cutter, I'm just going to use my ruler and hobby knife and cut it out because I need a straight edge on the other side. Think that'll work. Let's look at them on the communicator face. Yeah, I think that's going to look good. My next task for this will actually be to glue them down. And going to gluing, I use contact cement. I use contact cement pretty much for any build that has to do with foam. And the reason why is it sticks to itself really, really well and has a very nice bond. You want to put a layer down on each of the foam pieces, and then also get the glue down onto the communicator face as well. Both sides have to be glued. After they dry, which is usually about 3 to 5 minutes, you can stick these pieces down. Now, I want the beveled edge to go on the inside of the communicator. The flat edge is going to go to the outside, and you can just line it up with the outside of the communicator body itself. Yeah, I think that's going to work right there. Now, looking at my 2mm foam that I want to place over the top, I realize that I do need to trim it down just a little bit. So putting it onto my communicator face, I find out where I need to trim the excess 2mm foam away. and take it to the board so I can get a nice straight cut. And of course, this is also going to have to glue. So I flash my gluing on both sides. And once it's dry, I'll be sticking it on. Now I'm very careful when I stick it on because this can stick really quickly and cause all sorts of issues with it being kind of off target. So take your time. Using the back of my hobby knife, I'm actually going to sit there and press in all the edges so I get a nice crisp edge on each side. Now, I had previously pre-cut this frame here and I wanted to see if it would work with what I'm doing. But I realize I've got a big gap in there and I need some extra space. So I'm going to take an extra piece, cut it 45s, and then set it in. Sizing it up to whatever I have there, now I'm going to make it just a tad bit smaller so I can glue it also into place. Remember, the 45s will go down and fit to the other 45s inside, making the face of this more flat. I think that'll work. One thing I did notice once I was pressing it in, I did have a little bit of an edge on each one of the ends. I'm wondering, you know what? I see that I got an issue with that face here. I need to get two extra 2 little millimeter pieces to kind of size up with the 6 millimeter piece that I put in the center of the communicator. I go ahead and cut myself 2 strips, and I'm going to glue them down so that way it becomes flush with the top. Looking good so far. I think that's exactly what I need. Now, I check out the communicator face and I realize it doesn't exactly fit. If I try to trim off the edges, it's going to become a disaster. So you know what? I need to cut a piece that's going to go across the entire top. So this time, I decided to take just a piece of that 2 millimeter foam. I kind of cut it to size, and I want to put it onto the face of this communicator. And I want to kind of size it up, and then using my hobby knife, I'm just going to kind of line out where I need to make my cuts. So far, I think this is going to be a pretty good way to get the cuts that I need. But I will go ahead and tell you, this method in the end doesn't actually work. So I just want you to be warned before you go into it. Watch this and the second technique and find out which one's going to work better for you. Trim away the excess. I get a nice eye shape and I put it down just to see, will this work? I think so. So going in, I decided to go ahead and cut out where I think this face is going to be. I trim it out and I think I'm being pretty accurate, though I do run into some problems, sadly. I think this method would have worked if I would have basically undercut a little bit more instead of overcut so bigly. And you're about to see what I mean. Get rid of that excess. Let's take a look. Oh my goodness. A huge gap in there, and I really want this to be one solid piece, so I chunk it. This time I cut out what I think is going to be the perfect size face. Now, instead of, trying to size it up and do all this, I need that face to kind of sit where it is now. So I go ahead and I glue it down. And I glue the face too. I want it to stick into place, and then maybe I can just trim out the excess afterwards. One problem with this method that I found is it's easy to get kind of off where you want your face to be. I got lucky with mine, but you can easily not be where you want to be on this facing if you go too far. This time though, instead of being able to take it off and trim it, I trim each side, I score the center, but then I'm going to have to basically bring it up and then cut from the top in order to get rid of those little sides. I found that I had to take my Dremel to some areas and actually clean up some of these edges. Because I don't want it to feel like foam, I want it to be nice and straight. With some of this, when you have to go and you saw this area, this is actually the side that I had to Dremel down. And really because my hobby knife wasn't sharp enough, and because I don't have a flat area to cut against, it made some problems. Now, I have beveled edges on each one of these wrist communicator sides. So I'm using my 30-degree line here, in order to cut it to the edge. Now when I go to the other side, I'm using the opposite 30-degree side in order to figure out how to cut it to shape. I'm going to go ahead and mark each one of my sides first. I think that's important to have them all marked beforehand so you can get a visual idea of where everything's at. Using my very sharp hobby knife, I'm going to go through and just very carefully saw all the way down to the edge. I want to cut each one of these and make sure that they look nice and straight and the edges are super clean. It needs to look mechanical more than anything else and not look like it's a bit of foam. I think that looks good. Now, I do have to have this thing slope down an edge a little bit further back. For that case, I'm going to use my belt sander. Now, I didn't record the footage of me using my belt sander, but if you have a belt sander or a disc sander, it's a really good thing to use because that way you can just kind of shave off the edges and make it look nice. Now, I need some details out of 2mm foam to go on the face of this. Using a hole punch, I punch out one little hole, and I start cutting out of some spare 2mm foam my communicator box. And then I have about 3 little lines that I have to cut in order to have what I need. Now, I probably should have pre-glued this to begin with and then cut away, but I didn't. So just keep in mind, if you do this and you want to get them glued down, you're going to end up with some sticky fingers because you're going to have to put it into the glue, take it off, and then re-stick it once everything's dry. Using my hobby knife, I'm going to stick down my speaker, line it up, and then press it in. Same thing happens with my circle and my 3 little lines. I did find down the road that I had so much glue on my fingers and on my cutting board itself that I had to kind of, take it was like a rubber eraser and erase away a lot of this, and even like really do a super job on cleaning my fingers because I started sticking to the foam, and that's never a good place to be. Using your hobby knife is a good way to get these small intricate decals into place and make sure that they are exactly where they need to be before you press them in. I think those look good. I think they're gonna work. Last one goes on, and I need to add some details to my speaker. Now, when I go to add details to the speaker, I'm actually just going to cut in a border using my hobby knife, and I'm cutting down into the 2mm foam itself. I'm also going to cut some diagonal guidelines to show the speaker portion of this speaker. What I do off camera is I'm actually going to be taking the foam itself and hitting it with a heat gun. The heat gun will seal the foam, but it'll also cause, cuts in it to expand. So I get these nice details without having to, glue pieces down. I'm going to use a Dremel and a very small bit in order to drill 4 small holes, and I take 4 finishing nails and cut the ends off so I can glue them into place. A little bit of super glue, and I'm pressing each one of these finishing nails into the pre-cut holes on my communicator face. If you work slowly, that's okay. I think it works best if you take your time getting these in. You don't want to press them all the way down. You want it to sit up just a little bit so it has a little bit of a accentuated feature. Now, once I'm done with that, I take the whole thing and I'm going to flash it with some black Plastidip in order to seal this foam. I think it's time for painting. So taking some acrylic paint, I'm actually going to be painting the outside of this. It's kind of an orange, it's like construction orange in a way, but it's a little bit dull and subdued. I have to go on it in several layers, and then once I get it done, I'm going to work on the wristband. Now the wristband, I'm using a 1-inch black elastic. I'm going to size it up on my wrist to see exactly how much I need. Remember, each one of these might be different from each person that has it, so you might just do kind of a general cut, and then you can size it with more elastic or cut it to fit only you. Using some spare Velcro that I have, I'm actually going to cut out one end that's a hook and one end that is the fuzz. Yep, I think that works there. I stick the hook side down and I'm going to cut from my fuzz end. Yeah, that'll work. Now I'm going to actually put some glue down onto my elastic, and I'm going to glue the fuzz end down on one side. I'm going to use my clamps to hold it in place so it gets a nice grip, and once it's dry, I need to move to the other side. Now, I want to fit this hook in, and I want to make sure that it works by fitting to the other end. I'm going to go over a little bit. I don't want it to go exactly onto it. I need the edge to go out a little bit because I'm going to put some foam on the end of this. I want to have a kind of a little detail of that foam on the edge where I can pull the whole thing apart. I press my clamp on it, hold it in place, and now it's time for some weathering. Now I'm going to use this Nutmeg paint, and I'm going to kind of just tap in the inside just to make it a little dirty. Now looking at my watch, I notice I've got a little detail there at the bottom, and it looks like it's kind of printed on. I don't have that option, so I'm going to use some, it's kind of like printer's tape. So it's a sticker, but it's white. I'm going to cut it to size and make sure that it fits the way I want it to fit. I fold it in half, and when I unfold it, I see I got exactly what I need. At this point, I've also taken off the backing so that way I can just stick it right down to my communicator. Now I'm going to use some puffy paint, which is puffy paint you use for shirts, to put down 3 little button details. Now that this is dry, I need to trim off the excess of both the hook Velcro and the foam itself to make it look nice and neat. I want to make sure that it fits and works well, and that it opens up without falling apart. Yeah, I think it works. Now we need to get our actual communicator on this wrist strap. So I kind of size up, see what I need. You know what? I think I'm going to use this extra 2mm black foam here. And I'm going to cut out a small piece, and we just need to shape it up to what we have here. So we need to just trim it out because it needs to match the bottom. I get every corner, and I'm taking my time on this because not only do I not want to mess up the paint, including the white paint that I just put down, but I also want to make sure I get the cuts nice and neat. I should have only just a little bit of overhang, tops. Now that I have it, I'm going to glue it down to that wrist strap. Boom, there we go. Use a little bit of super glue. We'll put some more super glue down, and then we'll glue this down all the way. Now with this one, I'm making sure that I'm getting all the edges because I want this black foam to completely cover the inside of that watch, or I should say wrist communicator. And then when I press it all down, I'm making sure that all the edges sink right to the edge that I need. Once my glue is partially dry, that means it's got kind of an outside coating on it, I take the bottom of my paintbrush and I press in to kind of make some details. Now using Nutmeg and using that burnt umber, I'm going to mix it up with a lot of water, and I want to put a nice mixture on this. You want to make sure that your white paint is completely dry before you do this, because if not, you'll end up with a whole bunch of white in your wash. Now I'm going to put that coating down super thick, and I'm going to be using this towel over here that has a little bit of texture, and I'm just going to barely tap away just a little bit, making sure I kind of miss some of the crevices to give it some of that grime look. Now I use silver rub and buff to kind of scratch in some sides and details and make it look metal. You can do this with a toothpick or a brush. I'm using just the back of my paintbrush. I find that works really well. I get some scratching work on the inside because I need a little bit more of that silver tone on the inside. And then I go back in with the dry brush just to push that silver coloring around. I'm making sure I don't fill in all the gaps because I want some of that black in there in order to get some of the gapping. I put a little bit of, it's kind of a bronze paint on the top, just accentuate the extra pieces, and done. All in all, this was a pretty simple build. I kind of liked it a lot. It's not completely movie accurate, and that's something that, you know, as I went in, I had to kind of convince myself that it's okay It's not movie accurate, but it still kind of gives the impression of what they have in the film, and it still sells the idea of this being a wrist communicator, even though it doesn't light up. Now, I know that the parts that are kind of the coppery here, they actually light up. I'm aware of that, but again, this is for a cosplay build, and I don't need a whole bunch of craziness. I need it to work, look the part, so that way I can sell the idea of Beckett when I do decide to dress up as him. So, if you have any questions about the build, be sure to comment down below. I hope you've enjoyed this, and show me your build so you can follow me at TayRayGun on Instagram, and tag me there to show me your builds. Till next time, good luck with the build! Be sure to subscribe and like this video, comment down below, and be sure to hit that bell for notifications. Please follow me over at TayRayGun on Instagram.